Hi, this is the Heir of Carthage, and let's take a look at a Rome Total War online battle that I just played. Here is my Long Shield Cavalry. You can see they're dressed in their ugly brown uniforms of Spain. They were charging at some skirmishers that my opponent, Lord Phantom, who was playing as Carthage, was using, and then he countercharges with some Sacred Band, and at that point realizes that I have hidden infantry, and so calls off his charge. Or actually, I don't think he ever saw that I had hidden infantry. I think he just saw my other cavalry and noticed that his unit was a bit isolated. I am playing on the Pripyat Marshes map. It is in the winter time, and the reason why it's winter time and snow is because when you're playing as a barbarian faction, you better believe you better be fighting in the woods and in the snow, because barbarian factions didn't generally fight pitched battles on open battlefields like the civilized faction, so to speak, because that's just not the way their men fought. Their men usually weren't professional soldiers. They were usually tribesmen who knew the backlands and the country better. So here I'm attempting to trap some of his cavalry. He didn't know my hidden infantry. He didn't know its exact whereabouts. I had moved, so he knew it was there. But in any case, he manages to get away, only suffering a few losses to his Sacred Band cavalry. But it is indeed very important for me to get rid of that Sacred Band cavalry. Let's take a look at my army. They're a bit out of order, but I'll go ahead and tell you what I have. I have 4 units of these Bull Warriors without any upgrades. This is a 10k battle, so Bull Warriors cost 1150 denarii anyway, so I can't afford upgrades. I have 2 units of these Naked Fanatics, who are thankfully mostly naked. They have the war cry ability and have a combat bonus in the woods or snow. So they are going to be helpful to me here, as long as I keep them in the woods. My cavalry is 2 units of Long Shield Cavalry and 2 units of Round Shield Cavalry, which are now on this flank. Alright, my opponent, Lord Phantom, has a Carthaginian army here, composed of, I believe, 2 units Pointy Infantry, and, 3 units Pointy Infantry, 2 Sacred Band. He has some skirmishers here, looks like 3 units of Sacred Band Cavalry, and I believe he has 1 somewhere else, or hidden in the woods. Yeah, there's 3 units of skirmishers. In any case, that's what's visible for now. Now, neither one of us really brought a heavy missile component. My opponent just brought skirmishers, knowing that Spain doesn't have archers. That's not too big of a gamble for him. And he could have brought slingers, but I mean, I don't really think that would have had any huge effect on the battle either. Slingers don't get a bonus in the woods like archers. Yeah, I think this was that unit of cavalry he had hidden. He made a quick charge into some of my Naked Fanatics, and Naked Fanatics were not built to take cavalry charges, so he killed a good number of my men, and I didn't really kill all that many of his horsemen, which is unfortunate. So yes, now we can see that he has 4 units of Sacred Band Cavalry, all with some decent upgrades. So he's definitely got superior cavalry. My cavalry has gold upgrades, except for my general's unit, which is a general's bodyguard. And when you're Spain, I highly suggest that you bring a general's bodyguard unit, because if you lose your general, you are going to lose the battle. You all asked me to play as Spain, and it was kind of just like, crap, because I know for a fact that Spain sucks, and unless you're an extremely good skirmish player, which I am not. So you can see here my Bull Warriors are raining their javelins down on these Sacred Band, and this is actually where the Romans got the idea for Pila, came from the Spaniards. So I've depleted several of his units of Sacred Band by about 10 men, and then I'm going to immediately retreat after hurling those javelins, because the last thing I want to do is fight face on with these kind of spear troops. But I have led his men into the woods. Now my opponent was, I don't know if he was a bit frustrated, or if he's just, I think he's just all in good fun. He kept telling me like, oh, okay, come on, go ahead and let's start the fight. And, trust me, I would love to start the fight if I weren't Spain. And, I mean, can you just imagine what these, look at these Sacred Band troops. And then, let's take a look at my men over here. Yeah, I don't think so. Bunch of crouching naked dudes with urine-soaked hair to make it spiky. Yeah, I'm gonna bet on the Sacred Band. But in any case, what I'm trying to do is confuse my opponent. I've moved my troops off into wings, and they've been hidden for quite a while. One of the good things about these Spanish units is that many of them have the trait Expert at hiding in woods, and so that definitely helps me out. Now I'm going to record for just a moment longer and show you a trap that I'm setting for his cavalry. Here I'm moving out my much weaker 2 units long shield and a general's bodyguard to entice his 4 units of Sacred Band. And my opponent takes the bait, forgetting that I had these troops hidden here in the woods. So this was one of my finer moves in the battle. Thank goodness I did something right. So I jump his horses from behind, but I'm still in serious trouble because his Sacred Band cavalry is tough. Thankfully one of them routs and causes a bit of panic, and that leads to a whole bunch of his horses being killed right here. Remember that cavalry suffers a penalty versus infantry when fighting in the woods. So you definitely don't want to engage infantry in the woods unless it's on quick strikes with your cavalry. So now I have even the odds as far as cavalry is concerned. Now some of his units did return from routing, and I'm going to go try and finish them off as quickly as possible while they're still weak and their morale is poor. I am going to stop recording and cut out a couple of minutes of this battle and come back to show you the end. Alright, here we are back for the final phase of the battle. You can see that my opponent has formed a noob box, and before you start making fun of him for forming a noob box, remember that he's Carthage, I'm Spain. Spain sucks, and I have no missile units, and all of my javelins have been discharged. So this is indeed a very dangerous situation for me. I'm hoping that because his men are surrounded, it's going to have a morale effect. But remember that Sacred Band have very good morale. Pointy, not so much. And this is exactly what I'm hoping for here. This is why I charged my horses in second. Notice that a lot of his men are now out of phalanx formation. And getting his men out of phalanx formation is very good, because in a sword fight, my Spanish troops are far superior to what he has here. But as you can see, some of his units are still in phalanx. And all that I cut out of the battle was me chasing down some of his regrouped horses and skirmishers. And my opponent, again, asked me to go ahead and attack him, and I told him that I certainly will. I just needed to position my troops, and that's where you saw at the beginning of this, where I had him surrounded. Whenever an opponent's in a noob box and you have no missiles, you definitely want to surround your opponent. This creates a definite morale drop. And here you can see that I'm trying a move that I do from Empire. I'm trying to force my horses, even though it will kill them. I'm trying to force them into center of his blob of men, because when you do that to a phalanx, sometimes they'll drop out of phalanx mode. Though you can see that my opponent is doing a pretty good job of keeping his spears down. But over here, where these Sacred Band are caught in a sword fight with my bull warriors will absolutely waste them, because these particular units, bull warriors, have 2 hit points, much like Spartans or Bastarnae or any of the other units that have 2 hit points, so that they're very strong indeed, and that is why they cost so much. They have a missile attack of 17 when they throw their javelins, and unupgraded they have 2 hit points, 13 attack, and 12 defense, so the bull warriors are very tough. Excellent for using on siege towers and stuff like that, because they're very good in a close quarters fight. Now these naked fanatics that are left, a lot of them died, but they're also very good in a close quarters swords fight, especially in the woods and snow like I have them here. Again, if you're going to play as a barbarian faction, you have absolutely no reason not to play in the woods and in the snow, because even still, it's very hard to win with some of the barbarian factions, especially when you're not such a great player like myself. I'm only a mediocre player, really. So you can see that slowly but surely, we're cracking this noob box. And I say noob box, I don't really think my opponent's a noob. That's just the name of the formation. And one of his units of Sacred Band has routed, and that's definitely going to be a morale blow. Thank goodness. You know, I hate to kill all these fine Carthaginian soldiers, since I'm such a big fan of Carthage. But I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. And now you can see that my men have dwindled the Carthaginians down. And so now I decide to charge my general in, thinking nothing can happen. Yet he gets killed somehow. Anyway, it's a good thing that I lost my general at the very end of that battle. And to be honest, I'm surprised my men aren't routing even though the battle's over. Because typically when you're Spain, your general dies and you automatically lose. Anyway, good game to Lord Phantom. Hope you enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. My name was Speedy V, and if you really want to know what that's all about, you can ask me and I will describe it in the comments.